Listen up, folks. What I'm about to tell you is gonna sound like something straight out of a thriller novel, but I swear on my mama's grave, every word of this is true. This is the story of Maya Chen, and the day she discovered that everything, and I mean everything, she thought she knew about her family was a damn lie. Maya was 28 when her mother died. Cancer. The aggressive kind that doesn't give you time to say all the things you should have said years ago. Eleanor Chen had been a quiet woman, the type who kept her cards close to her chest, who smiled politely at neighborhood barbecues, but never really let anyone in. Not even her own daughter. The funeral was small. A handful of relatives Maya barely knew, some co-workers from the elementary school, where her mother had taught for 30 years, and Mrs. Pacheco from next door, who brought enough casseroles to feed a small army. Maya went through the motions, accepting condolences, nodding at the right moments, pretending she wasn't completely numb inside. But here's the thing about grief, it doesn't hit you all at once. It sneaks up on you in the quiet moments, when you're sorting through your dead mother's belongings and realizing you never really knew her at all. The house felt different now, emptier. Maya had grown up in this old Victorian in Connecticut, with its creaky floorboards and drafty windows. Her mother had inherited it from Maya's grandmother, who'd inherited it from her mother before that. 4 generations of Chen women, all living under the same roof at different times, all keeping their secrets locked up tight. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after the funeral, when Maya started going through her mother's things. She'd been putting it off, making excuses, but the estate lawyer had been calling. There were decisions to be made, papers to sign, a whole life to pack up and file away. She started in the bedroom, clothes mostly. Her mother's wardrobe was as modest as the woman herself. Cardigans in muted colors, sensible shoes, nothing flashy. Maya bagged it all up for goodwill, trying not to think about how her mother's perfume still clung to the fabric. Then she moved to the study. This had been her mother's sanctuary, the one room Maya had never been allowed to enter as a kid. "Mama's private space," Eleanor would say, her voice firm but not unkind. Even as an adult, Maya had respected that boundary. Now standing in the doorway, she felt like an intruder. The room was lined with bookshelves, packed tight with everything from classic literature to gardening manuals. Her mother had loved to read. Maya ran her fingers along the spines, remembering how Eleanor would sit up late into the night, a book in her lap, and reading glasses perched on her nose. The desk was antique oak, heavy and imposing. Maya sat down in her mother's chair and started opening drawers. Bills, paid and filed away with meticulous care. Old report cards, Maya's, from elementary school. A few photographs, mostly of Maya at various ages. None of her father. He'd split when Maya was 2, and Eleanor never talked about him. "Some men aren't meant to be fathers," was all she'd ever say. But it was the bottom drawer that changed everything. It was locked. Now Maya wasn't naive. She knew people kept private things in locked drawers. But something about this felt different. She sat there for a long moment, staring at that brass keyhole, and felt a chill run down her spine. This was it. This was the line between before and after. She found the key in her mother's jewelry box, a small brass thing on a chain hidden under a tangle of costume pearls. Her hands shook as she slid it into the lock. Inside was a leather journal, worn and cracked with age. Beneath it, a stack of letters bound with twine. And at the very bottom, a photograph that made Maya's blood run cold. The photo was old, the colors faded to that vintage amber tint. It showed a young woman, 20, maybe 25, standing in front of a rose garden. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and striking features. She wore a sundress and was laughing at whoever was behind the camera, her whole face lit up with joy. The woman looked exactly like Maya. Not similar, not kinda like her, identical. Same eyes, same nose, same crooked smile Maya saw in the mirror every morning. But here's what really messed with Maya's head. The photo was dated 1952, 70 years ago. There was no way this could be her.
Maya's hands trembled as she opened the journal. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. The first entry was dated June 3rd, 1950. Today, I met a man who will either save me or destroy me. His name is James, and when he looks at me, I feel like I'm the only woman in the world. Mama would kill me if she knew I was seeing him. But how can something that feels so right be wrong? Maya flipped through the pages. The entries spanned 2 years, chronicling a secret love affair. The woman, who never mentioned her own name, wrote about stolen moments, whispered promises, a love that had to be hidden from the world. And then Maya reached the entry dated August 15th, 1952, and her stomach dropped. I'm pregnant. God help me, I'm pregnant. And James is gone. He promised me we'd run away together, that we'd start a new life somewhere. His family couldn't find us, but he left, just like Mama said he would. She was right about everything. The next entry was dated 3 months later. Mama has arranged everything. I'll go stay with Aunt Pearl in Vermont, have the baby there, and give it up for adoption. It's the only way, she says. The only way to protect our family's name. I wanted to keep high. No, it's a girl. I can feel it, but Mama says I'm being foolish. You're too young to be a mother, she tells me. You'll ruin your life and the child's. Maya's heart was pounding now. She flipped ahead, desperate for answers. I held her for exactly 10 minutes. They wouldn't even let me feed her. She had my eyes, my nose. She was perfect. They took her away while she was crying, and I swear to God, something inside me died in that moment. I named her Rose, even though they said I shouldn't name her. She'll always be my Rose. There were no more entries after that, just blank pages and the weight of a story that had ended before it could really begin. Maya sat back, her mind reeling. She grabbed the stack of letters and untied the twine with shaking fingers. They were adoption papers. Official documents from St. Catherine's Home for Children in Burlington, Vermont. And there, in black and white, was the truth that would shatter everything Maya thought she knew. The baby, born November 3rd, 1952, to an unnamed mother, adopted by Eleanor Chen and her husband, Thomas Chen, on November 20th, 1952. The baby was Eleanor, Maya's mother, which meant the woman in the photograph, the woman who'd written that journal, was Maya's grandmother. But wait, Eleanor had always said her mother died when she was young. Maya had a photograph of her grandmother, a stern-looking woman who Eleanor said had raised her alone after her father died. Maya ran upstairs to the hallway where the family photos hung. There it was, a portrait of grandmother Ruth Chen, circa 1965, a woman with severe features and grey hair pulled back in a bun. She looked nothing like the woman in the rose garden. Maya felt like she was losing her mind. She went back to the study and tore through the rest of the drawer. There had to be more. There had to be an explanation. And that's when she found it. A birth certificate, yellowed with age. Name, Rose Eleanor Whitmore, born November 3rd, 1952. Mother, Catherine Ann Whitmore. Father, blank, Whitmore, not Chen. Maya's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the paper. She pulled out her phone and did what any person in the 21st century would do. She Googled Catherine Ann Whitmore, 1952, Vermont. The first result made her drop her phone. It was a newspaper article from the Burlington Free Press, dated September 15th, 1953. Local woman dies in tragic accident. Family seeks privacy. Catherine Ann Whitmore, 25, of Shelburne, died yesterday when her car veered off Route 7 and into Lake Champlain. Police are calling it a tragic accident, though Miss Whitmore's family has declined to comment. She is survived by her mother, Margaret Whitmore, and several cousins. Services will be private. There was a photograph with the article. It was her, the woman from the rose garden, Catherine. Maya's grandmother had died less than a year after giving up her baby, and somehow that baby Eleanor had been adopted by people who'd lied about everything. But why? Why the elaborate deception? Maya spent the rest of the night going through every scrap of paper in that study. She found more photographs, hidden in a manila envelope at the back of a bookshelf. Pictures of Catherine as a child, as a teenager. Pictures of a grand house with white columns. Pictures of Catherine with other young women, all of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a Fitzgerald novel. And then Maya found the newspaper clipping that explained everything. It was from the society page of the Boston Globe. 1950. Whitmore, heiress, to wed Senator's son Margaret Whitmore of Beacon Hill, announced the engagement of her daughter, Catherine Ann Whitmore, to James Ashford Rothwell III, son of Senator James Rothwell of Massachusetts. The wedding is planned for June 1951 at the Whitmore estate. Miss Whitmore is a graduate of Radcliffe College and comes from one of Boston's most prominent families. James, the man from the Journal. Maya grabbed her laptop and started digging. It didn't take long to find what she needed. The Rothwell family was political royalty in Massachusetts. Old money, older power. James Ashford Rothwell III had indeed been engaged to Catherine Whitmore in 1950, but he'd married someone else in 1953, a woman from another wealthy Boston family. They'd had 4 children, and he'd gone on to be a congressman himself before dying in 2010. Catherine had been discarded, her baby taken away, and a year later she'd driven her car into a lake. Maya felt sick, but she kept digging, because now she needed to know everything. She found Eleanor's adoption records buried in another envelope. Thomas and Ruth Chen had been a couple in their 40s, unable to have children. They'd adopted baby Rose renamed Eleanor through a private arrangement. The lawyer who'd handled it had connections to the Whitmore family. And here's where it gets really messed up, folks. Maya found a letter, dated 1975, from a lawyer representing the Whitmore estate. It was addressed to Ruth Chen, who'd apparently been widowed by then and was raising teenage Eleanor alone. The letter was a payment agreement. $25,000 serious money back then in exchange for Ruth's continued silence about Eleanor's true parentage. The Whitmore family wanted their scandal buried permanently. Ruth had taken the money. She'd taken it, and she'd never told Eleanor the truth about who she really was. But Eleanor had figured it out. That's what all the locked drawers and private spaces were about. Maya found her mother's own journal, started in 1995. The year Ruth died. I found the papers today, tucked in Mother's Ruth's Bible. All these years, she lied to me. Let me believe I was her biological daughter, that my father was a Chinese immigrant who died before I was born, but it was all a lie. My real mother was Catherine Whitmore, and she gave me up because society told her she had to. She died when I was less than a year old, and I never got to know her. Eleanor had known. She'd known for 30 years and never said a word. There was more. I went to Boston today, hired a private investigator to track down the Rothwell family. James is still alive, living in a mansion in Cambridge with his legitimate children and grandchildren. I sat outside his house for 3 hours, watching them have a family barbecue. My half-siblings, my nieces and nephews, they have everything: money, status, family. And I have nothing but a dead mother's journal and a paid-off secret. I'm not going to tell Maya. What good would it do? She's happy, settled, building her own life. Why burden her with the knowledge that she comes from people who threw away their own blood like garbage? Better she thinks she's just Maya Chen, daughter of a schoolteacher and a man who left. Simple, clean, no complications. Except it wasn't simple, and it sure as hell wasn't clean. Maya sat in that study until the sun came up, reading every word, looking at every photograph, and slowly a plan formed in her mind. She wasn't going to let this die in the darkness. Catherine deserved better than that. It took her 3 days to track down the Rothwell family. James was dead, but his children weren't. The oldest, James IV, was a lawyer in Boston. Maya called his office and left a message. My name is Maya Chen. I believe I'm your half-niece, and I have proof. We need to talk. He called back within an hour. They met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, because apparently that's where rich people in Boston go to have their worlds turned upside down. James IV was in his 60s, silver-haired with that kind of polished look that comes from generations of privilege. Maya brought everything. The journal, the photographs, the letters, the DNA test she'd ordered and had expedited because she'd managed to get a DNA sample from a hairbrush she found in an old box of James III's belongings that had been donated to a historical society. Don't ask her how. Let's just say she's resourceful. James IV went pale as she laid it all out. He didn't say much, just kept staring at the photograph of Catherine in the rose garden. "She looks like you," he finally said. "She looks like your grandmother," Maya corrected. He picked up the journal with careful hands, like it might disintegrate. "My father never spoke about her. None of us knew." "Convenient," Maya said, not bothering to hide the bitterness in her voice. "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair? My grandmother died at 25 because your family threw her away like trash. My mother spent 30 years knowing she'd been bought and paid for, knowing she came from people who were ashamed of her. So forgive me if I'm not too concerned about your feelings right now." To his credit, he didn't argue. He just sat there, reading Catherine's words, and when he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, and Maya realized she didn't know. Revenge, recognition, money. None of it would bring back Catherine or Eleanor. None of it would change the past. "I want the truth told," she finally said. "I want Catherine's name cleared. She wasn't a scandal or a mistake. She was a woman who fell in love and paid the price for it. And I'm tired of her story being a secret." James IV nodded slowly. Okay. My father's papers are being donated to the Massachusetts Historical Society. I can make sure Catherine's story is included. The truth. All of it. It wasn't enough. Not really. But it was something. Over the next few months, Maya worked with the Historical Society to piece together Catherine's life. They found more photographs, more letters. They tracked down distant cousins who remembered stories about the wild Whitmore girl who'd fallen for the wrong man. And they found the rose garden. It was overgrown now, part of an estate that had been sold off decades ago. But it was still there, behind a mansion that was now divided into luxury condos. Maya got permission to visit, and she went on a warm day in June, carrying Catherine's journal and a bouquet of white roses. She sat in that garden for a long time, reading her grandmother's words out loud, telling her about Eleanor, about herself, telling her that she wasn't forgotten. "You were loved," Maya said to the empty air. "Maybe not by the people who should have loved you, but by me, and by Mom. We carry you with us." The Historical Society published Catherine's story the following year. It made local news, hidden history. The Whitmer-Rothwell scandal revealed after 70 years. Some people thought it was fascinating. Others thought it was dredging up old pain for no reason. Maya didn't care. She'd given Catherine something Eleanor never could have voiced. But here's the thing that still keeps Maya up at night. The thing that turned this from a story about family secrets into something darker. She was going through the very last box of her mother's things, about to donate it all, when she found one more envelope. It had been taped to the underside of a drawer in Eleanor's nightstand, hidden so carefully that Maya had almost missed it. Inside was a letter, addressed to Maya, written in her mother's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before Eleanor's cancer diagnosis. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've found Catherine's journal. I'm sorry I never told you while I was alive. I told myself I was protecting you, but the truth is I was protecting myself from having to admit that I was a coward who let the truth die rather than face it. But there's one more thing you need to know. Something I discovered 3 years ago and couldn't bring myself to tell anyone. James Rothwell didn't abandon Catherine because he was weak or because his family pressured him. He abandoned her because she found out what he really was. I found a letter she'd written to her mother, but never sent. It was hidden in a book I bought at an estate sale. Can you believe that? 70 years later, and her words found their way to me. In the letter, Catherine wrote that she'd discovered James was already married. He'd married at 19, to a girl from New York, and kept it secret from everyone in Boston. The engagement to Catherine was fake, a way for both families to merge their money and influence. He was going to commit bigamy. When Catherine confronted him, he told her he'd take care of it. He'd handle his first wife, he said, and 2 weeks later, that woman was found dead. Apparent suicide. Catherine put it together. She knew, and that's why she ran. Not because she was ashamed of being pregnant, but because she was terrified. James Rothwell was dangerous, and she'd seen too much. The car accident that killed her. I don't think it was an accident, Maya. I think they found her. I can't prove any of this. The woman who died in New York, her name was Alice Brennan, and all the records were sealed. James went on to have a successful marriage and career, and no one ever questioned it. I'm telling you this because you're stronger than I am. If you find this letter, if you want to dig deeper, you have my blessing. But please, please be careful. The Rothwells have money and power, and they've already destroyed one generation of our family. I love you more than you'll ever know. Mom. Maya sat in her empty house, holding that letter, and felt the weight of it settle over her like a shroud. She'd thought this was a story about secrets and shame, about a woman who'd loved the wrong man and paid the price, but it was so much darker than that. She pulled out her laptop and started searching for Alice Brennan. Died 1952, New York. It took some digging. The records were buried deep, just like Eleanor had said, but she found it. A 20-year-old newlywed, found dead in her apartment from an apparent overdose. The case was closed within 48 hours. Her family, poor immigrants from Ireland, hadn't had the resources to push back. James Rothwell had been in New York the week she died. Maya found his name in a hotel registry, documented in a book about mid-century political figures, and suddenly, Maya understood why her mother had kept this secret, because this wasn't just family drama. This was murder, possibly 2 murders. If Catherine's accident was what Eleanor suspected, Maya stared at that letter for a long time. She thought about going to the police, but what could she prove? Everything was circumstantial, and everyone involved was long dead. She thought about publishing it, blowing up what was left of the Rothwell legacy, but that would hurt James IV and his family, people who hadn't asked for any of this. In the end, Maya did something her mother and grandmother never could. She made a choice. She's never told anyone what was in that final letter. Not the Historical Society, not James IV, not even her therapist. She keeps it in a safety deposit box, along with all of Catherine's papers and Eleanor's journals, waiting. Because here's what Maya understands now. Some secrets aren't meant to protect the guilty. They're meant to protect the people who come after, who have to live with the weight of other people's sins. Maybe someday she'll tell. Maybe when the last of the Rothwells are gone, when revealing the truth won't hurt anyone but the dead. Or maybe she'd do what her mother did, pass it down to the next generation and let them decide. Because that's the real secret of the Rose Garden. Not that terrible things happened there, but that the women who came after had to decide whether the truth was worth the cost of telling it. And folks, I'll tell you right now, Maya still doesn't know if she made the right choice. She tends her own garden now, in the backyard of that old Victorian. She planted roses, white ones, Catherine's favorite. And sometimes, on warm summer evenings, she sits out there and talks to ghosts. She tells them about her life, about the career she's building, about the person she's dating who doesn't know any of this. She tells them that she's happy, most days, even with the weight of all this knowledge on her shoulders. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, Maya swears she can hear her grandmother laughing, that same joyful laugh from the photograph, before everything went wrong, before she loved the wrong man, before she lost everything, before she died with a secret that would stay buried for 70 years, only to be found by a granddaughter she never got to meet. That's the thing about family secrets, they don't stay buried forever. Sooner or later, someone digs deep enough to find them, and when they do, they have to decide what to do with the truth. Maya's still deciding, and that envelope in the safety deposit box, it sits there, waiting, a ticking time bomb of truth that could destroy what's left of the Rothwell family. or maybe set Catherine free, once and for all. Maya visits the bank once a month. She opens that box, holds the letter, reads it again, and every time, she puts it back and walks away. But one day, she won't. One day, the truth will come out, because it always does. And when it does, the world will know that Catherine Ann Whitmore wasn't a scandal or a cautionary tale. She was a woman who saw evil and tried to run from it. She was someone's daughter, someone's mother. She was Maya's grandmother, and she deserved so much better than the Rose Garden gave her. That's the secret, folks. Not what happened in that garden, but what Maya is going to do about it. And trust me, when she finally makes her move, the Rothwells are going to wish Catherine's story had stayed buried, because hell hath no fury like a granddaughter seeking the truth.